Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, welcome to another episode of the Chaps Cats. Stuffed it up. Almost 300 episodes. Occasionally I get it wrong. My name is Jake. I'm joined in the virtual studio by my brother, Sambo. How are you?
I'm the same, mother. I'm good. How are you?
That's right. I'm good. I had to say that we are obviously a part of the Hoops Crew Media Network. And I had to say that because someone actually commented last episode on the preview pod, are you guys brothers or are you just like mirroring each other's style? Because we both had the hair out, beards
It's true.
on. And so I think it was either Ben or Paul from the Hoops Crew chimed in with their broskies. So yes, we are indeed brothers.
We're not.
Welcome to the
It's
show.
actually reasonably unusual for us to like have the same styles at the same time. We generally end up at polar opposite ends, and then just kind of like just for brief dalliances in the middle where we're undecided and just sort of like the hair grows out, things happen. We both get busy. You don't you don't style anymore. Style is the thing of
That's
the
right.
past for me. Um, but yeah, it's true. I hadn't thought about it until they mentioned it, but we have sort of just met in the middle.
That's right. No, I'm glad. We don't really address it ever on the pod. It's just the three chaps. But yeah, it's. I guess someone finally noticed the biology. On tonight's show, Cats v Kangaroos round 20 recap. Can't believe the 12th time in 20 rounds that we get to talk about Geelong winning a game of football. Not bad for a team who were apparently dropped off the cliff after 2022. I said, I think to you, Sambo, in the car, this is another year, even if we lost every game from here on out for the rest of the regular season, we'd still have won more games than we lost this year. If we lose our last four, we finish 12 and 11. So look, in a league that's full every year of teams that are mired to the bottom of the table, it's pretty awesome that we just keep getting seasons where we have more reasons to cheer than to cry our eyes out. So we're going to get into Cats v Kangaroos round 20 recap. Then on the extended part of the show, which is available for our Patreon subscribers, we're going to talk some Patreon question time. Mr. Speaker, on the question time, got a couple of good conversation starters tonight. One of them around Geelong's game style this year and whether or not it's contributing to the Cats being more gettable at home at Kardinia Park. And the other one in regards to the mandatory amounts of list changes that each team has to make at the end of an AFL season and which unlucky Cats might find themselves off the list in 2025 due to the necessary shuffling that needs to happen. So if you want to hear all that part of the show, go on over to the Hoops Crew Patreon, sign up for a 7-day trial and see what that is all about. We'd love to see you over there. And Sambo, as we do every week, we have to take a moment to shower some appreciation on the Hoops Crew Media Network sponsor. That is, of course, Valhalla Brewing. If you find yourself in North Geelong, get on over to the Brew Hall. If you're in the CBD, then find your way to the tap room. Valhalla Brewing jumped on board the Hoops Crew as the media network sponsor at the start of this season. And just want to say thank you to them for their support of this show and all the shows that you find on the Hoops Crew Media Network. But let's not waste any more time here, Sambo, with the pre-game palaver. Let's jump straight into the Cats v Kangaroos round 20 recap. I'm going to run you down through how the game unfolded, and then we'll get into breaking down what your thoughts were. It started like this. The Kangaroos out the gate hot. Jai Simpkin, gold after 5 minutes, 54 seconds. Cam Zurha, another 6 minutes later, added a goal. Then it was Nick Larkey after 14 minutes. The Cats reeling as the Kangaroos piled on the scores. It didn't last long, though, Sambo. Geelong soon had the game back on their terms. They soon had the lead. It was Ollie Dempsey with another freak goal, responding to a player trying to rush it through, sort of trying to have a best of both worlds. Ollie Dempsey picks his pocket, kicks a goal. Tyson Stengle snags Ripper, and then Shannon Neal from the set shot after 26 minutes and 9 seconds put the Cats in front at the quarter time break. 3-4-22 to 3-1-19. The Roos fired the first shot of the second quarter via the boot of Paul Curtis. The Cats, they had the next three of the half as Max Holmes, Ollie Dempsey again with an absolute rip snorter out of the air, and Ollie Henry all pushed Geelong's lead out to 6-5-41 to 4-3-27 at the half. And the Cats weren't taking the foot off the gas in the second half. They added the first goal of the second half to Jeremy Cameron after nearly 3 minutes. They had a couple of behinds to Lawson Humphries and Ollie Henry before Ollie Henry found the big sticks to push the lead out further. North had a bit of a fight back. They kicked 3 goals in a row to Nick Larkey, Harry Sheasel, and Zane Dursma to close to that 10-point mark. The Cats, though, they had the answer. Tyson Stengle, after 28 minutes, 40 seconds, with a great goal in traffic. He got another one from the boundary, almost unbelievably so. And the quarter literally ended with a goal from Patrick Dangerfield after a ripping contested pack mark. He goes back, slots the goal to put the Cats up 74 to 46 at the final change of ends. The Roos, they fired the first shot again through Zane Dursma after 4.5 minutes, but it was mostly the Cats thereafter. Goals to Jeremy Cameron, Sean Manor again, Ollie Dempsey with another. The Roos got a couple of the last 3. I think they were both, one to Nick Larkey, one to Bryn Teakle. Brad Close goal sandwich in between those as Geelong closed out a very impressive, in my book anyway, 16-10, 106 to 10-6, 66 victory over North Melbourne. And speaking of over to you, Sambo, for your general takeaways from this victory. Geelong's 12th of their season, their 4th in 5 games.
Yeah, it's my favorite kind of win, really. Like, yeah, you obviously feel elated after close wins, and it's a different kind of enjoyment when you just come out the gate red hot and just obliterate someone like the 22 grand final. But this kind of game is really kind of my favorite experience overall. If I could have every game go like this for Geelong with a few experiences, I'd be pretty happy. Where you win, it's comfortable by the end of it, but you feel like it was a week off where you kind of go, ooh, if we go up against someone tougher, are we going to have had a bit of a lazy one? Like the Roos, to their credit, asked the questions. I like it when teams come out and ask questions of the Cats and they answer them, and that was really how I felt this game went. Roos threw the first punch, asked the first question, and the Cats responded. Cats basically continued to respond until Clarko and the Roos had nothing else to give, and then the Cats more or less just strangled it and took it away. Pretty much for that Patrick Dangerfield goal, I think that was the last gasp. Really, like the margin wasn't that extravagant for that goal on the siren, but it was really the point where I felt like I was fully comfortable. Like, there was a couple of, I think it was the second quarter, felt like it was really very much played on our terms, and we weren't getting as much reward as the Cats might have hoped. Our delivery inside 50 was a bit sloppy. We weren't quite able to kind of bring it down in any meaningful way. But sort of, yeah, after we continued in that fashion, and then I think once the Roos made that push and then Dangerfield got that goal, we kind of brought it back. So, yeah, I really sort of did like a celebratory game to play, to watch. It was obviously watching it on your birthday with family around was an extra touch. But yeah, just to have it interesting, nerve-wracking. It took me a little while to sit down. I did some pacing at the start of the game. Everyone kept asking me if I wanted a seat. But it took me a little while. So yeah, I was pretty impressed. Like, a lot of people try and take it away and go, oh, it's just North Melbourne, blah blah blah, business as usual at the Cap. But I think all in win this point on. And I think we further silenced a few doubts about the Cats, in my opinion. And we brought brought all the answers for a club that is, has been, as much as no one wants to mention it now after the loss. Before the game, everyone was talking about how much better North Melbourne had been. And after the game, everyone wants to write North Melbourne off and go, it doesn't really count. It's not a real win. But yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it and felt pretty well sated after that game.
Yeah, the goalposts always move for the Cats. And look, I'm sure other fan bases would be finely tuned into how that happens for their side. And no doubt everyone does have their own version of that. But from a Geelong perspective, it seems like, I saw North Melbourne fans on Twitter saying how out of form Geelong are and that they should knock us off and they should flog our midfield and all these sorts of things. And I just thought, yeah, we got badly beaten against the Dogs, but, flash back. We just, easily handled Essendon, who at the time were flying. We went and gave a flogging to the Hawks, who like a couple of weeks before had been talked about, the most likely side to play Sydney in the grand final. And then
they
Collingwood,
still are, really.
who'd started.
Still
yeah,
being talked about.
Exactly. And then Collingwood, sort of looking resurgent, and the Cats go and, handle them in an arm wrestle, eventually win by 20 points. And suddenly, the narratives are ever shifting. I think you've got to focus on the facts. That is that Geelong has had a weird season, in terms of starting 7-0, then having those losses and then sort of rebounding. But it's been a weird season for everyone. Look at Sydney now, really sort of struggling to find form and like a pretty ugly loss to the Bulldogs. And then you got the Bulldogs, a team that everyone wrote off. Everyone said Bevo's going to be sacked by, week 7 or whatever. Everyone had said, give the Swans the cup already. But suddenly that's looking pretty weird. I remember having discussions with everyone about at the start of the year, the Hawks, they're tanking. Is it the right approach to be so crap for a year? Are you going to lose the winning mentality? And now they're absolutely flying. So I don't know. I think you can only look at what the teams are doing in any given week. I think in any given week, anyone can beat anyone. The narratives would have conformed to whatever pleased the media had the Roos gone on with the job. And as it was, they didn't. And Geelong got a very good win. I was just going to bring up a couple of team stats, Sambo. The disposals, the Roos actually had more touches than the Cats, 404 to 351. Geelong pretty much right on their season average. The Cats used the kick more than the Roos, 230 to 209. And the Roos were nearly plus 50 on their season average for handballs. The Cats down 14 on their season average. I'm going to come back to talking to you about that split between hand and by foot for each team.
Mm-hmm.
Cats led the inside 50s 58 to 49. They were more efficient inside 50, 48.3% to 38.8%. The clearances were interesting. North got the better of Geelong in the hitouts, 59 to 34. They just shaded the clearances, 38 to 36. But interestingly, the centre clearances were split. That obviously at times has been an area of concern for the Cats where they've copped a few beltings. They've also handed out a few beltings like the Collingwood game. But those were split down the middle, 13-13, and North just shaded the stoppage clearances, 25 to 23. North plus 11 in contested possession, 157 to 146. But that 146 is actually up on Geelong's season average. The Cats about on their season average in terms of uncontested footy, 204 to 249. Turnovers, way down. We had 91 turnovers last week against the Dogs, down to 69. Nice. This week, and 79 for the Roos. And the last little ones I'll talk about, 105 marks to 82. And the tackling, the Cats up to 74 to the Roos 77. 19 of Geelong's tackles coming inside 50. Feel free to spin off on whatever bits and pieces stood out to you. But I would like you to address at least a little bit that the Roos really looked to try and use that handballing that the Dogs used last week to beat us and open us up.
Yeah.
It worked for a while. What did you see the Cats do or change, do you think, to put a stop to that? Because there was certainly parts of the game early where they really opened us up like a can of beans. But as the game went on, we put an end to that. What do you think Geelong did or swung to get that stopped?
Well, I think there's a few things, which is, I mean, obviously a bit of a cop out. That's always any question you get asked about football generally. One of them being that I don't think the Roos were able to maintain it regardless of like I think Ben pointed this out in the post game live. I tuned in for a little bit, and he was talking about how he had mentioned to his missus that he, early on when the Roos were flying, he kind of said, "I don't know if they can maintain this, like this level of efficiency and momentum." And I think that's fair. That's probably, I think most teams probably couldn't. I think the Dogs, like the previous week against the Dogs, the Cats were very out. We were not at our best. But I think the Dogs also were playing out of their skin. The efficiency that they were able to have, it was like they'd taken all their efficiency and put it into disposal, and they'd left no efficiency for the kicks on goal because they could not kick a goal through that middle patch of the game. But like their ability to blind hand pass perfectly legally every time, of course, to someone that picked it up in the wet, one-handed, off a bounce. Like it was freakish, and like a large portion of that is skill and team synergy and structure and all that kind of stuff playing together, knowing where each other's going to be. But I think also it's momentum, and it's also, luck is a kind of a dirty word to throw out in any kind of analytical way. But I think it's just, the footy gods where they were at that week. And like again, the Dogs beat Sydney quite handily, but I don't even think the Dogs looked as good against Sydney as they looked against us the previous week. Like they still looked really good, but that level of efficiency, just disposal efficiency in those conditions was just freakish. Um, and I don't think the Roos have that. So I don't think that even with the luck, I don't think the Roos were going to be able to maintain it the way the Cats did. But from a Cats point of view, I think one of the big things that we did was sort of holistic change across the field, but one that was more or less, it's a small tweak, and it's something that we talked about with. I don't know if I wasn't there for the recap. I don't think, was I, for the Dogs game, so we must have just been talking privately. The fact that the Cats were getting sucked into like 3 players tackling a player against the Dogs and early against the Roos. And what happened against the Roos was a real settling. This kind of like, it was almost concerning the level to which the Cats sometimes weren't tackling. Like, from an eyeball point of view, you might go, where's they're just jogging along like arm length away this guy. But I think that's actually what we did really well, was structuring up when they wanted to get the handball chains. We just didn't get sucked in as much. We were happy for them to run with it a bit, and we would keep on the inside. Like if they're going to run with it, they're going to want to run wide to avoid us, push them out to the pockets. If they're going to run it in and have a shot or something, push them out wide as possible, and worry more about filling the space than like targeting a player each or tackling the play with the ball, and just run. Make sure you've got your sliding doors working. Everyone was kind of like, there was a lot of pointing. I know it's a really like basic thing to point out, but it's something that I think I saw a lot more of from the Cats. It wasn't just Stewart and Dangerfield. Everybody was really communicating with each other. They're jogging along to feel, to just keep the play with the ball under just enough pressure to make him move where they want him, and then they're pointing behind him, going, you cover me that way, you head over that way, and they were really just sort of filling up those spaces and making it so the Roos just couldn't get those fast, free handballs over the top, open up space. It still happened in patches. You can see when the pressure builds, the Roos got their momentum. There was that little patch later in the game. The Roos got their momentum, and suddenly we're 3 players piling on that one player, and the ball comes out, and there's 4 Roos without a man, and they're away. And it just sort of like happened. Momentum kicked in, and panic was setting in with the Cats. But I think for about 60% of the game, the Cats were just way, way, way better at not getting sucked into that and just jogging around, filling up your space, not getting wrong sided. And then that way, the Roos' best avenue to goal once the Cats were doing that was those kind of freakishly efficient kicks into like a free mark. Like the Cats have pushed all the way up in an attack, and the Roos are trying to get back as quick as they can, pump it. And there was a couple of those goals that we always talk about where you go, that guy just didn't have anyone on him in our back 50. But I think that's a byproduct of the way we're trying to push up an attack. So I think it was that. I think it's only a really small change, but it was just across the entire ground that no one was getting sucked into that, just that dogged kind of desperate pressure. It was very clinical, structured pressure.
Yeah, and if I was gonna like focus in on players that I thought really were the catalysts for lifting us when we were on the back foot early, some things that sort of stand out. Obviously, Ollie Dempsey's opportunism, that his not only his ability but his willingness to stay switched on, and just in situations where other players might go, "Oh, that play's dead, so I'm just gonna run off." His ability to just be clever and loiter, and then he gets a goal out of it, and Geelong are on the board. Stengle, snatches one not long after. The opportunism of Stengle and Dempsey really impressed me. Ollie Henry's marking, I thought, early in the game, allowed Geelong to maintain some possession up forward, in their forward half. And then around the ball, I thought Tom Stewart, anytime that he was put at a stoppage and then just zoning off, he ended up having 4 intercept marks and 13 intercept possessions. Jack Henry, it was with 6 intercept marks and 10 intercept possessions. But Stewie's influence around the clearances, even if he wasn't winning a clearance, just his physicality and pressure. And then the other one that stood out to me was Sean Manor. I thought Sean Manor, again, really was just a gritty presence who sort of helped, be that rising tide that lifted all boats when the game wasn't on Geelong's terms. I don't know if there's other little moments that stood out to you, but that handful of players to me were ones that made a massive difference in turning the game in Geelong's favour.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. I mean, obviously, did you mention Stengle? Sorry.
I was in with Dempsey sort of thing, just
Yeah,
their
okay, yeah, yeah.
opportunism, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's fair. I was going to say, yeah, Stengel. Stengel was similar to Dempsey in that. And even in his marking as well, he took some pretty clutch marks when it needed to be done. But yeah, I also thought Manor. Like I will be honest, Manor didn't make it into my votes this week, but he was actually pretty close. Like he really hung around. He's probably my 4th or 5th. And I don't really know what his stat line looks like all the way through, but just from just like an influence level, I thought he was huge. And like you say, huge when maybe we were on the ropes a little bit. And then and I thought Jack Bowes was also pretty good in a similar way. The not to be negative, but there's a couple of players I'd probably say Tanner Bruin, his first game back, so I won't be harsh, but probably Bruin Myers, I think had a bit of a rough, certainly like first half, where you didn't see him that often, and when you did see him, they they were contributing to some turnovers, or just either making some skill errors, which is fine, or just making some decisions, like some disposal decisions where you just go, it's like, that's uncharacteristic, I suppose. From Bruin, I think the fact that it's his first game back is pretty acceptable. Also, it is kind of par for the course where he's at in kind of his progress towards fully fitting into the team. Myers is a bit of a weird one. Myers has been so consistent, and I think he did do some really good things towards the end of the game. Or not the end, that's maybe harsh, but in the back half, I suppose, of the game. But yeah, early on, I thought he had a couple of questionable moments. But Zach Guthrie was the other one. Also, I think Tom Stewart obviously was hugely influential, but there was also times a classic thing happens where you go, oh, thank God it's Tom Stewart. Oh no, it's Zach Guthrie. Like he took a couple of marks, couple of spoils. Did a couple of deliveries off the halfback running forward. That, yeah, again, he is so vital in that freeing up of Stewart because he can basically just do what Tom Stewart does down back when Tom Stewart wants to push up.
Yeah, and I was just gonna bring up another stat that I was adding up before, which in terms of like Geelong turning the game around, um,
Mm,
was and it sort of plays into what you were talking about with, committing the right amount of resources to the tackle, not everyone being drawn in, is it allowed them to set up off the ball. And I think that's
mm,
really well reflected in 27 intercept marks to 9, which, that's a massive, massive difference. Apparently it's the same amount that the Dogs took against the Cats the week before.
mm,
Um, and that was Jack Henry with 6. It was Tom Stewart with 4. As you said, Zach Guthrie with some really, incredible plays there as well. Um, I really liked that we were back to intercepting. Like
mm,
that was something we I felt like we struggled so much with last week against the Dogs, was taking intercept possessions and intercept marks. So it was nice to see a bit of a return to form there. It's funny, I'm just looking through like kicking efficiency, and Brian Myers ends with 63.6% kicking efficiency, which is just a lot. It's just funny how deceiving it is. Tanner Bruin up at 66.7%. Like those are both perfectly acceptable numbers for
mm.
me. So I
Yeah, I
guess
saw the same.
it's funny. It's one of those things sometimes. I had it a bit watching the VFL on the weekend, that sometimes bad moments and good moments, the extremes sometimes stick with us more. That you see
Yeah.
maybe Brian has a bad, 15 minutes, say, and so that then sort of colors the way you see the rest of his game. Like, I definitely know I'm guilty of that, and in the reverse, sometimes I go, "Oh, such and such had a great game," and then you're looking at, "Oh, maybe not really." Like, he might have had a couple of great moments, um,
Mm.
but I would agree. Like, I think that Tanner Bruin is definitely in our best 23. But I don't think he's not my first picked midfielder for the Cats. If it,
No, I think
like, and he may not even
he
be the
could he
second.
could get there, and that's presumably
Definitely.
what we're hoping will happen. Um, because you see flashes in that game. There was like maybe one or two times where I think I even said to you, I was like, you want him to do that like 6 to 10 times a game. Like it doesn't have to be all the time, but like grab it, pick it up in that manner, run the way he ran, and kick that kind of kick out that target. You're like, oh, if he could do that, he could be a game winner. It's just at the moment, I think he's probably only doing it once or twice a game. But he absolutely has the ability. So again, I'm not sure. Like I think he was already struggling with this a little bit from my point of view, but also coming back into the side, not having played with the team, like it can be hard to get that real instinctive synergy going where they just know where you're going to be, and you're just like, and you can read the ball better than anybody else in that moment, which is really what you need to be able to do. So no, it's not a knock against him as a player. It was just more of I think it's just where he's at in his development as far as it goes towards like not individual skill, but just fitting into the unit really. And as far as my Myers goes, like again, the reason I brought up it's just because it's uncharacteristic. Like for him, for Bruin, it feels more correct after the course, and with Myers, it's more noteworthy because it's not how it's not how I would normally expect. Again, and it was often more the fact that I just hadn't seen them, and sometimes that's not because they're playing badly. It's because they're just doing small, tiny, minute things in the flow of the game. Um, yeah, look, I think the whole team had a pretty like Mitch Duncan also probably, if you use the highlights, had some clangers. But overall, I also thought he had a big influence on the game.
Yeah, we kept saying sometimes I almost feel a bit sorry for Mitch Duncan. There's times where it's almost like, I don't want you to give it to me here, and they give it to him, and he's just like, oh
Yeah,
boy, I'm
yeah, I
getting
was ready
too
for a
old for
rest.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and he's out there with the bandage on his head, so he looks sort of like Dad's Army or something as well. Um, or maybe he's one of the grandparents in the bed, in the Wonka movie. But like, I think you're right. I think you could focus in on his lowlights and say, "Oh, he's washed," but then that would be overlooking a lot of really good stuff that he did. What did you think about no Sam De Koning in the ruck? We had Mark Blixarves win 25 hitouts, Shannon Neal, 8 hitouts, Gary Rowan won a hitout. But those were the only cats to win a hitout. Um, Blixarves won over a third of his hitouts to advantage. So what did you think about Sam De Koning being back? Do you think that's by nature of the opposition and what we in order to cover their height to keep freeing Stewie up, or yeah, how did you feel about that after we've had sort of a month of Sam De Koning, the ruckman?
I mean, it's bloody hard to tell what they're thinking sometimes. To be honest, like not in a bad way, but just in terms of I literally said before that game that Stanley hadn't been selected after the kind of showing he's done in the VFL, and I said I think they're all in on SDK as the ruckman. I think this is like until we sort of can make a call on Conway, when his health gets good. I think this is, and then they didn't. They really just not put him in the ruck. As far as I know, for one, he might have gone in there a couple of times and not had a hit out, but he didn't register a hit out. So, if he did go in there, yeah, or I at least was, I could be all in on SDK as a ruckman. I really like, obviously he was getting beaten up statistically in hit outs because he's so green as a ruckman. He's so good at going up against some really well-established ruckmen. But just what he was able to do is like second efforts even, so he didn't get the hit out, but he's continued pressure, his ability to pinch it and get a clearance. His work off the ground and his disposal, just even with hand passing and kicks. I really liked what he brought to the middle. But I wonder if we've noted before in the back line that he's a confidence man. If he gets beaten a couple of times, it can wipe him out for the game, and and I wonder if he's had a similar thing with the ruck where he's like really invigorated to start new position. I can kick some goals, maybe I can get involved. But it could have been quite frustrating that he was getting beaten in the actual main part of what you're there to do as a ruckman. Um, and or it could be that they, overall they're not happy with what he brought and want to roll him down. It could be for him. Maybe he wanted to go back down. Could be for the opposition, like you said. It could be something to do with the fact that they wanted to keep moving Tom Stewart around. And I guess if you've got SDK, Zach Guthrie, Colin Jasny, Henry, um, and Duncan all, and Butts obviously back as well. If you've got those guys down there, any one of those guys can push up a bit higher when Tom Stewart drifts back. Because Tom Stewart had 32 disposals, I think, and like 20 of them, it's like way more than half were in the back half, in our back half. So he still played predominantly behind, like in the back. Even like I imagine some of his clearances, he's winning them and running backward. He's technically on the over the halfway line to our side. But yeah, I wonder if Sam De Koning is as much a symptom of the Tom Stewart sort of experiment as anything else.
Yeah, yeah. It was interesting watching Stewie. You and I know we discussed how frustrated we found the Dogs game to watch, and I know Johnny did too, where it was like he was playing almost predominantly back, and then they'd reluctantly sort of throw him in the middle as a bit of a band-aid. I much prefer this,
Mm,
where he's starting at the stoppage and then going back after the stoppage has been won or lost, sort of thing. Like I
yeah.
much prefer that. It's not surprising to me in the least that he's taken to this so quickly and so well. Um, so yeah, I just love seeing him around it. It's fixed such a big problem for us. Um, I think it's actually helped down back in some ways because, and actually, someone made the point too. Sorry, I'm sort of pivoting onto a slightly different topic, but that Sam De Koning playing back allowed us to see a bit of almost vintage Jack Henry, in that Jack Henry was able to maybe zone off and intercept a bit more. And I thought that was probably a fair comment that
Mm,
that Jack Henry, although we don't think, everyone else has sort of been saying drop him to the twos. We've kind of felt he's had a pretty decent year altogether. Like obviously it's had its rough patches, but you could say that about most areas of the team. Maybe with the
mm.
exception of the forward line and our wings have probably been two areas that are almost not flawless, but it'd be pretty hard to criticize their output. Um, but yeah, I thought that was a fair comment that with De Koning back there, it probably did liberate Jack Henry a bit. But Tom Stewart's just such a star. Like I, it just amazes me. Like it doesn't surprise me that he's so good in this new role, but I am amazed, I guess, just in awe of it. He's such a good footy player. Um, yeah, it's just so impressive. Um, did you have? Oh, actually, there was a play because we're going to move into our votes shortly. Was there any sort of team specific stuff that we need to continue talking about, or do you want to just fire off a couple of players who we were impressed with who didn't make our votes? I've got one that we haven't talked about yet, so I'd like to get
Ryan
that in.
Myers, Ryan Myers is also second on the team for tackles. Just thought I should probably point that out,
Yeah, right.
just also, you know, go against
Yeah.
my eyeball read to go. That's another thing that I probably underrated that he brings, and it's not necessarily something I think of him as. So you don't rate, it's almost like a forward. You mostly rate their game based on
Mm,
the goals they kick, but tackles inside
mm.
forward 50 or score involvements and set all that kind of stuff is obviously also important. Um, uh, well, you go. Who did you have?
Alright.
What thing did you have to mention?
I I wanted to mention, it's crazy that he goes without a mention, and this is just this insane standards to which he's sort of set himself. Jeremy Cameron. Jeremy Cameron has a
Mm,
day of 19 touches, 15 by foot. He has 8 marks, which I think was the second most on the team. Third most really behind Stewart and Henry. A couple of clearances, 537 meters gained, which was team high. Spent 93% time on ground, kicked 2 goals too. I thought, if he has his radar on, he kicks 3 goals 1 or 4 goals zip. But even so, couple of goals and nearly 20 touches, most of them by foot. I thought he was really dangerous, a very threatening player. I know some people want to see him just play in and around the forward 50, but the damage he does, the impossible matchup he gives when he's further around the ground, um, I think he's so valuable. And although I love seeing him kick bags of 6, it's not like he didn't have the chance to kick his 4. He just didn't quite take advantage of it. So, yeah, no, I was really impressed with Jeremy Cameron. He just didn't quite get in my votes.
yeah, no, it's a great one. I thought two more forwards actually that need to mention. One's Gary. I hated seeing him go down. And it's one of those classic things where his stat line is like nothing. It's like 2 tackles and 3 disposals or something. I felt like his presence was immediately missed and took us a little while to reconfigure, and that kind of led to some real Roos momentum when we didn't have him up there covering for Jeremy Cameron, roaming, providing an opposite, a alternate target to Neil. He was really causing, again, didn't really like create a stat, but just causing a lot of havoc in their back line as he does. Putting pressure on, causing them some turnovers when he was trying to tackle, going up for marks that were, he was never going to take, but just bringing the ball to ground. Providing some of that panic that led to like the Stengle and Dempsey goals. So I thought he was actually really providing for the team that we really lacked then, and it took us a while to find. I don't think we ever replaced it, but it's sort of we had to reconfigure and discover some different avenues into that sort of dangerous inside 50. And the other one is someone that didn't get into my votes, and I think probably because it wasn't like a 4 quarters performance, not as in like, oh, he faded and he was really bad, but I just don't think he was called upon in the way he was. For a good quarter there, at least, Ollie Henry was looking really dangerous, I thought. Like some of the mark he was taking, even like up the ground, roaming out and down onto the wing and taking some intercepts or taking some marks off our, from our kickouts, where we kick out and then he might take the second or third mark in that chain, in a contested mark or uncontested. I thought he was a real like, what word? Like temperature setter. Like he wasn't necessarily the one that he wasn't emblematic of the whole team, but he was an example. I feel like I should have mentioned him earlier when we were talking about some of the ones that were playing well when we weren't necessarily playing well. I thought he was causing real headaches, and it's the kind of performance that if he wasn't, standing next to Tyson Stengle and Ollie Dempsey, absolute freaks in front of goal. I think it was a really good forward performance from him. Like in another team, in another game, he would have been like the most valuable forward we had. It just happens to be that there's like 2 or 3 other guys who are absolute freaks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The way he was clunking marks was so impressive, and I think a good example to set for Shannon Neal in terms of the improvement you can make. Like, we've joked on the show before that that's something that Ollie sometimes has struggled with is getting the grippo on the hands.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, we mentioned Sean Manor already. I just wanted to shout out the fact he led the team with 32 pressure acts, which was pretty massive. I believe he led the game. Yeah, he was 7 clear of the next closest player, which was a tie between Tom Powell of the Roos and Jack Bowes of the Cats with 25 each. And the other player who very rarely gets a mention on this podcast, and sort of doesn't get a mention anywhere, to be honest, like not as much as anyone else, because he's a role player. Brad Close, 14 touches, 5 marks, 4 tackles, 198 meters gained, kicked a goal, and also had 21 pressure acts, which I believe was the 4th most for the Cats or 5th most or something. Equal 4th most with Brian Myers and Ollie Dempsey. The Cats, it's funny, I've made the New England Patriots comparison before for a number of reasons, which I know some Cats fans don't like, but something that sticks out for me about those Patriots was they were full of very clever, smart players. And I think that's what I like, and to see a comparison in with Geelong is there's so many smart players who are happy to do what you ask of them. Like Ollie Dempsey, Jesus, get it out, Jake. Brad Close is not getting a ton of but he just does his job. He just chases hard all game. He lays tackles. He'll always do a couple of clever tap-ons. He makes good overlapping runs. Like you go back to the 2022 grand final, some of his tap work, ball bounces. The Selwood goal's the perfect example. And Brad Close just, volleyball spikes it to Selwood to kick that goal. We've just got so many clever sort of brainiac players like Brad Close that they're just dangerous because they seem to not have a lot of ego about them. Brad Close will lay 5 or 6 tackles and kick a goal, even if he only has 7 or 8 touches. So, love players like that. Let's do votes.
Just quickly, Ollie
Sorry.
Henry
Yep.
also. No, that's right. Just equal second on the team for score involvements. Ollie Henry. And also just wanted to quickly say, Max Holmes and Lawson Humphrey also I thought had pretty solid games.
Yeah, Lawson Humphreys, we said it watching. Lawson Humphreys needs to be the player that gets those Mitch Duncan running through 50 handballs. They kept trying to set it up for Mitch Duncan to kick the goal from outside 50. And I think he sort of gave himself the vote of no confidence almost. Like he tried to square it up or put it to the top of the goal square. Lawson Humphreys has the leg and the accuracy to slot those. I reckon we need to get him in that situation more often. So yeah,
21
let's do our
disposals.
votes. I know, in like 87% disposal efficiency, he goes about it very nicely. Lawson Humphreys, he's slotted in and looked very at home at AFL level. I'll let you go first, Sambo. What are your votes?
My one is going to Tyson Stengle. Maybe harsh. I don't know. Obviously some absolutely freakish goals, super important, super vital, and I think he is a star. Like he kicks goals that I don't think I've I don't think I've put money on many people kicking them in the history of AFL, let alone anyone that's playing right now. So yeah, some of his stuff is almost I don't know, Gary Ablett Jr.-esque sometimes, the way he can kick it. Like that snap, and you're going, that's curving the wrong way from that point. Like that snap that he kicked from the right hand, like it's on the wrong foot and it's curving the wrong way, and yet it goes through. And that just a little grab out and the kick, his instincts are so good, and I think he's just so important, especially when Cameron's we're without Hawkins, Neil's doing, and Cameron is playing pretty well, but he's not playing the stand in this goal square and get 6 goals kind of role. So I think what Tyson Stengle brings is so valuable. My 2 votes go to Ollie Dempsey. Ollie Dempsey just had slightly more around the ground impact than Stengle, and also his goals. Like I've never, I haven't seen many players be able to convert the goals that Tyson Stengle kicks. I haven't seen many players attempt the goals that Ollie Dempsey gets. Like to kick them in the way that he kicks them, and the way, and he's like compass for where the goal is, and how that oblong unpredictable ball is gonna come off the boot. That one, like, a couple of weeks ago, where he just like tilts the foot to the ball. He doesn't even kick it. He tilts his foot, the ball lands on him and shoots through the goal. But yeah, then he's obviously like goal line sneaky goal, and then the soccer. And then his roving one, SDK saw it coming and dodged, like ducked under it. He's such an exciting player. Like it's just, yeah, it's incredible. And like I said, I think Tyson Stengle is the best version of a type of player that we've got and we've seen before, and they exist in the league. But in my opinion, Ollie Dempsey is a little bit one of a kind, and he's only getting better. And my 3 votes go to my new obvious choice for the 4th week running. 3 votes, Stewart.
Future captain, in my opinion, Tom Stewart. Yeah, I'm just going to echo what you've said, because my votes are actually exactly the same. I ummed and ahed between Stengle and Dempsey, and if I could, I'd add the 3 votes together and split them in half and give each of them 1.5 votes. But I can't. And as you said, I probably just went for Dempsey. The freakish goals, obviously, that almost cancels the other one out, because they both kicked crazy goals. But as you said, just a little more influence around the ground for Dempsey. They each had a goal assist as well. That's what's crazy. They each laid 5 tackles. We're incredibly lucky to have those players in the side. But just a couple of things. So I've gone 1 to Stengle, who, just for context, has now kicked 107 goals in 63 games for the Cats. 107 goals in 63 games. with 49 behinds. So 107 and 49 in those 63 matches for the Cats, which is just super impressive. Ollie Dempsey has kicked 18 goals, 7 and goal assists. He's got 18 of those. So on pace for 20 or more goals and 20 or more goal assists, which we predicted at the start of the year. It's exactly what we said, in fact, on the Buy Stonks episode. We said Ollie Dempsey can be that player who gives you 20 plus goals, 20 plus goal assists. He's doing that and also averaging about 18 touches a game. As you said, he is a one-of-a-kind type of player. I legitimately think that if he stays at the Cats, and I think he will, and if he can play, 250, 300 games, he will go down as that like Stevie Johnson type player of this next era. I think he's just a freak, a true freak. And we're often critical of some of the commentary broadcast teams, but I actually thought they had a couple of pearlers on the weekend. Dermot Brereton actually had a great point about Tanner Bruin and his propensity to slip over all the time. And he was talking about, is it the angle or the speed he's trying to turn out of a contest at? He's like, Tanner Bruin often ends up on the ground and he probably needs to work, Yeah, and I think there's something to that. But the other one, I think, was Jason Dunstall, who said if they ran a poll of players who have the most fun playing footy, surely Ollie Dempsey has to be close to the top of it. I think that's true. He just looked like he's having a ball out there. So I gave him my 2 votes. And Tom Stewart, my goodness, like just constantly redefining his own career. It's insane, really. I just wanted to have a look sort of at his last few games, like his season as a whole. He starts like a house on fire, has the concussion, goes out, comes back, gets sort of tagged out of it a bit. Here's his 5 games since they've moved him more on ball. It started with Essendon. 23 touches, 5 tackles, 4 clearances. Against Hawthorn, 26 touches, 5 tackles, 3 clearances. Against Collingwood, 26 touches, 4 tackles, 5 clearances. Against the Dogs, in a loss, 26 touches, a goal, 5 tackles, 7 clearances. And then against North, 32 touches, 1 tackle, 4 clearances, plus his 9 marks, 4 of which were intercepts and 13 intercept possessions, to go with a season high for him, and I imagine a career high 18 contested possessions. So he's just, speaking of one of a kind. I legitimately think if you played him all year in the midfield, he could be up for an All-Australian midfield selection. I know it's a packed category, but
Brownlow.
Yeah, exactly. So 2025, let's get on it. All right, that is it for the public part of the show. We're going to duck over now to Patreon and talk about some of these topics that our subscribers have thrown at us. If you want to get on board that, go on over and subscribe to the Hoops Crew on Patreon. You can start a 7-day free trial now. You can cancel it after 7 days if you want and just duck out for free, which that's fine. But come and have a taste of what we're offering over on the Hoops Crew Patreon. Make sure you hit that subscribe, the follow, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. We appreciate hearing from you. And that is all from us. As usual, we'll play out with the old halftime horse. Until next time, go Cats!
Go Cats!
You get your cordial, you get your lollies, a spray from the coach. Lollies, absolutely. So you get your cordial, you get your lollies, a spray from the coach. Lollies, absolutely.
That's what halftime's about.